What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the Kansas City Commercial Real Estate Market Pulse. I'm Logan Freeman, your host. We are sponsored by Midwest Commercial Real Estate Advisors, and today I'm joined by Ed Winslow. He's going to blow your guys' mind with some recent stories that we have had in the ever-changing world of visibility online. So super stoked to talk through that today. I'm not going to introduce my team because I did that on Tuesday with Gabe Einhorn, somebody who probably you saw at the gala. And one thing that I will say, that guy is showing up everywhere on social media. And if he got asked who invited you to the gala, his response was, I posted my way in, which I think is pretty cool. So, Ed, if you don't know Gabe, I got to get you guys connected for sure.
Yeah, I know. Yeah.
All right, good. So Ed is a commercial real estate marketing veteran. He's an entrepreneur. He's founder of Commercial Real Estate Press Releases, where he's helping brokers, owners, and different businesses generate visibility, credibility, and momentum through strategic media exposures. He's got decades of experience in the industry. He's worked alongside everybody's, social media friend, legendary broker, Bob Knakal, and he's gained a front row seat to the habits, the systems, and the mindset that separate elite producers from the rest of the field. And today, Ed is combining old school brokerage wisdom with modern marketing strategy. What I love about proof stacking and the exclusive listing pitch kit, if you listen to Ed enough, which probably, Nina's probably got me beat, but there's very few people that have probably digested as much information that Ed's put out than me, I would say. And he takes the same methodology of what he was doing years ago through actual press releases and print media and applying that today. And it's just a fascinating, process. And we're going to talk about that a lot. He's the author of this amazing book here, Proof Stacking, as well as you can see my notes sticking out of the top of the exclusive listing pitch kit. So Ed, welcome to the show today.
Yeah, thank you for having me. This is great to be here. We got a lot of cool topics to talk about, and I got a couple things to share today that really are going to help people make money starting today, especially if you've got a pitch. Like if you have a pitch today, I'm going to show you something that will win the exclusive listings, every single time. It's almost like an unfair advantage, and it's really ideal for the boutique shops because the big firms are not going to let the brokers do this.
That's right.
They're not, because they have too many compliance issues. There's too many approval chains. And, this is a really, really unique advantage that any boutique shop, anybody that's doing deals from, $500,000 up to, let's say, 20 million. Or it depends on the market. It could be higher because we like Bob Knakal. I mean, to me, Bob's a boutique shop.
Absolutely. Well, guys, if you're listening in live, make sure to drop your comments, your questions into the chat. We're reviewing that. We're monitoring that. Simon Inwea says, Edward Winslow is going to blow you away. There's Bob Knakal. He says, the session with Ed is going to be off the charts great. Everyone on your team should take notes and pages of notes. He knows exactly what he's doing. Ben Turnbow says, you are right on visibility. Most listings are decided before anyone walks into the room. And there's Gabe Einhorn saying this is going to be a great one. Thank you all for tuning in. Very much appreciate you guys being here. So if you got questions for myself or for Ed, make sure to drop them in to the comments. Ed, real quick, because people can find this, but for the listeners and the folks that are listening in after we're going live here, don't know about your journey into commercial real estate. Where did that first begin?
Yeah, so I started with CBRE, and in New Jersey. I was in their Parsippany, New Jersey office, just like, right out of college, first job type thing. And I was in a new office, and, there was nobody really that could help me. There were a couple of leasing brokers there. I didn't want to do leasing. I wanted to do sales, and there was nobody there that could help me. So I heard about Bob. Somebody told me about Bob Knakal. I called up Bob, and I said, hey, I'd love to come in and meet you and learn about what you're doing. I want to apply what you're doing in New York that's so successful. I want to apply it out here in New Jersey. So Bob said, well, why don't you come on in on a Saturday? And I started going in every Saturday, and I would help Bob. We would roll up our sleeves. We would work on market reports. We had newsletters. analyzing the maps and all that, like the big map room that you see. I mean, that we were, we had every broker had their own little territory. When we started, it wasn't product specific, it was geographic specific. And the whole idea was to focus on that market. That's what made us. And so what happened was so I started to apply it in New Jersey, and then Bob started his own firm a year later. And I was like, Bob, as soon as I heard, I was like, Bob, I want to come work for you. So 2 weeks later, after he opened his doors at Massey Knakal Realty, I was there, and I think I was the first broker for the first 2 years.
That's amazing.
It was a very tough time, because it was Paul Massey, Bob, and me. And, we were just working it. And the only thing was really interesting because we had left a big name firm. We didn't have the support of the brand anymore.
That's right.
All we had, and I think we had one listing that they brought over. And it was very different because all of a sudden, even as they were doing very, very well in a very short period of time over at CB, start their own firm, and all of a sudden you don't have the credibility.
Yeah.
And now what do you have? All we had was a system. And the system is really, really simple. And here's the thing, we didn't know this. There was nobody really to tell us how this really worked. We just implemented what we thought would work, something that Bob and Paul had already done, which was really creating insightful market information. I was at the New York gala, the big gala that he threw with the strip mall guy, Don Tetman, yesterday. And, he talked about how what he's doing now is, instead of going a mile wide and an inch deep in his market, he's going a mile deep in his market and an inch wide.
Mm-hmm.
That's a very, very significant thing. And it's really hard for a lot of people to do that, because you think, if I'm going to go deep into my market, that I'm going to miss all these amazing opportunities outside of my little spot. But the reality is that when you work and you get so deep and every single brick in your market, that's what really resonates. Like if you go do a search online, you search Claude or ChatGPT and say, what is so unique about Bob? What's his real, unique selling point, for example? And what they're probably going to tell you is it's market intelligence. They're going to recognize Bob for market intelligence. And if you ever see Bob speak, you're going to hear him talk about the market. He's not going to talk so much about the deals he's done, though he does do that as well. But he talks about the market. He gets really, really deep into his market. So he separates himself from the pack. That's the first thing. So that's what we did when we had no credibility. We had nothing, but it worked.
Yeah, well, absolutely. I appreciate you sharing that. One of the things that really stuck out to me from what you said, and first off, I want to give George a shout out for being here. Atlanta office broker, George Bonvillain. Thank you for being here, buddy. I owe you a call back. I'll get to it, I promise. I have had like 25 meetings this week, all because Ed and his dang press releases getting me all these inbound leads. I'm just moving from inbound lead to inbound lead to inbound lead. We're going to talk about that here soon. But George, I appreciate you being here. Thanks for saying that. And he's calling you the GOAT. Ed Winslow is the GOAT, the greatest of all time, baby. That's amazing. Love that. Nils, AI loves hyper-localization. To your point, Ed, another win for the boutique and the agile broker. Niles, thank you for being here. Thank you for your comment. Yeah. We're definitely going to spend a lot of time talking about AEO, GEO, whatever you want to call the EEOs, but it is fantastic. But what you showed me just, through the time that we've been working together, I've been digesting the content, reading the book, going through the listing pitch kit, is listings are won before the meeting. And in your book, in your listing pitch kit, you say, man, just get the meeting, right? Get to the property. And that's super important. But and the reason I think you're saying that is because if you have done the work on educating hyper-localization on press releases and market reports, you get that meeting, you're armed with that data, that's a win. You're likely going to win right there because that visibility is building the trust. And then that reputation compounds. And what you just mentioned from going from CB to Massey Knakal was we had no reputation, really. We had no visibility. We had to build it, right? And that's so important. And you guys built it without the tools that we all have at our fingertips today, right? And I think that's really important to understand as well. So thinking about the process of building that visibility now, it's easier now than ever, right, Ed?
Well, it is, but you got to do it. It's content marketing. I mean, we were doing content marketing before there was the internet, and that's one of the things that that really made a big, impact on my career and got me started was, I sold this building, in the early 90s. And when it was so tough to, that was during the S&L crisis, like all these buildings were going into foreclosure. The people that weren't getting foreclosed on, they didn't need to sell. Mm-hmm. So like, all these properties went into this black hole. There was nothing, there was no business. And I happened to get this listing, and I sold the building, direct deal. It was like $1.5 million, 6% fee, which was pretty awesome at the time, right?
Absolutely.
And it was a direct deal. And I was like pretty psyched, I was like, I had no money at the time. And all of a sudden, I got this check for like 80 grand. And I'm walking back to the office after, I went to the closing. There was 2 attorneys, buyer, seller attorney, no buyer, seller, just the 3 of us, broker with his hand out, 2 lawyers. I get the check. I'm walking up Madison Avenue back to the office, and I can still remember, like you've got the cabs coming, people jumping out of cabs, and they're all decked out with their suit and tie, because back then everybody wore suit and tie, and they're going into all these fancy restaurants. And I'm like, I'm like one of them, I'm like, I'm one of them, but because I just did this deal, so I'm feeling pretty awesome about myself. And it, like, I sobered up real fast, and I'm like, like nobody knows I did this deal. Mm-hmm. Like I'm completely invisible. And so what am I going to do? So I like tomorrow, okay, I'm going to go back to the office, and I'm going to pick up the phone. And what do I say? Back, oh, you want to sell your building, or you want to buy a building, or, whatever, licking envelopes. We used to get sick from the glue on the envelope. We used to lick, stuff envelopes and lick the envelope glue and everything. And, that's when I had this idea, I'm going to write this article about this sale, and I'm going to send it into the New York Times. I don't know where the idea came from, but I did it. But the article was not written as a broker. It was written more as a newsworthy item. It was about the history of the building. And there was a story. I wrote a story. And I sent it into the New York Times, and they published it on the front page of the Sunday Times real estate section, which was amazing. And that was an amazing story, because I thought that, Monday morning, I'm like, oh man, I'm going to be rich. Everybody in New York City is going to call me to sell their building because they just saw me in the New York Times. I didn't get a call for a month, and nobody ever mentioned that they saw me in the New York Times. That was a really amazing experience. And I'm going to tell you, anybody that's listening to that is a really, really valuable thing, because nobody ever told me how marketing really works. And I didn't understand it. You think, well, okay, I'm going to put an ad in a local classified, and somebody's going to call me right away. It doesn't work that way. It's this proof stacking thing. It's like building this credibility over and over and over and over. How many times do you have to touch somebody before, they're going to trust you to pick up the phone and call you? Right. I mean, that's the way it works. And I got a call. I mean, this is an amazing story, because I got a phone call from a guy that I had spoken to numerous times in my market, who owned a building. And I thought I was had a relationship with this guy. I talked to him 10 times over 2 years. And I got a phone call from him one day, and he said, hey, Ed, this is so-and-so. And I'm thinking, like, I know who you are. We just spoke like 2 weeks ago. You don't even know who I am. And he said, yeah, you were recommended to me as the guy to sell my building. And I'm thinking, I don't know who recommended me, and you don't even know me. And that just sort of blew my mind. And so I ended up getting the piece of business. It was easy to get, because what the media did for me was it gave me credibility. Mm-hmm. The only thing that changed in my life is I had this visibility. I had this credibility in the market. And that's really the name of the game. That's how it works, because that's how, when you've got the credibility before you walk in the room, you've got an edge over every other broker who is not specialized, who is not in your market. Anyway, so that's my background. That's how I really got things going.
Yeah. Well, one thing I want to ask you, Ed, is you target working with boutique brokerage shops. And, I just recently had BJ Feller on. She's a senior vice president over at Northmark in Chicago, done over $7 billion in transactions. So she is a rock star. And she's kind of talking to me about this Goldilocks curse in commercial real estate right now. I'll explain it in 30 seconds. Similar to the K-shaped economy we are experiencing right now, the big brokerages that have the money to spend for the technology are winning business. Okay, that's no doubt. But then there's this middle market that has this big compliance and bureaucracy kind of component where they can't just go adopt Claude or OpenClaw or any of the things or do a press release. And so they're stuck because they want to move fast, but they don't have the spin to do it, or they have the bureaucracy holding them back. Then you have these boutique shops that are adopting the new technology, the new marketing methods, and they're taking market share away. Are you experiencing that? Are you seeing that happen in real time with the brokers that you're working with?
Yeah, well, the important thing, yes, the answer is the boutique shops that are very, very focused, that are going, a mile deep and an inch wide. Those are the ones that are going to win. And it's important to understand how that offline strategy also works online amazingly. Okay. And the way that all the algorithms today are, the content that they're creating, they're pulling from someplace. And so they're pulling it from credible sources. Okay. So that's why, like when you create your content the right way, and you've got news sites like Business Insider or USA Today linking over to a particular page. That's what gives a piece of content the credibility. That's what gives it the trustworthiness. Now, when you apply that to a specific market and you do it over and over and over, these algorithms start to trust you as the source of content. And that's what works. And let me tell you like the most amazing story. I got to just share this with everybody. And, I don't know if I should, spill the beans on the whole thing, but I do work with Lev Mavashev in New York. He's an apartment building broker. He's a very, very successful guy. And he focuses just on selling apartment buildings. And so we work with him on creating market reports, success stories, get him on his website, focused on apartment building sales. Anywhere from 5 million to 50 million is sort of his market. And he's a boutique shop. So he's doing some nice size deals. I mean, he's done some portfolio deals at 50 million, and he's a boutique shop. Anyway, so I ran into him yesterday at the Knakal thing. And, I said to him, because I'd never met him in person, even though we've been working together for a couple of years. And I said, Lev, tell me, how's it working for you? Like, I know you're still paying me, so things must be going pretty good. And he said, let me tell you what just happened. He said, I just got a listing. I just got hired to sell a building from somebody who went on to ChatGPT and had interviewed 2 different leading apartment building firms. And he was going to hire one of the 2 of them. And the guy went on to ChatGPT and said, I'm looking to hire either this broker or this broker. Which one do you recommend? And ChatGPT came back and said, I don't recommend them. I recommend Alpha Realty. Isn't that wild?
It's incredible.
And he got a call from the owner, and he got the listing. He got that exclusive listing. That is amazing. That is where this is going. And most people that I work with, they don't tell me these kind of stories. And a lot of times they don't know the story. They just know the business is coming in. But this is the world that we are in. We are in a massive, like we all know this, right? You're using AI. Everybody's using AI. But when you use AI the right way, applied to a formula like the one that I'm talking about, the one that I was schooled on, working with Knakal for many years. And, I built out Bob's strategy, his website strategy and, his whole SEO. We do a lot of press releases for Bob. If you look at his website, it's a lot of market information, it's success stories, and it's media. And it's the same thing over and over and over. And, but that's, we're doing the same thing for Lev. We're doing the same thing. We work with, we're working with you on the strategy. We work with Joe Serafin down in Virginia. I mean, Joe Serafin has an amazing story. I did an interview with Joe Serafin, and we were talking about a deal that he did. It was $14 million deal. And I said, how'd you get the business? Like, how do you find, like, how did you get the seller? And he said, well, they found me from a press release that you did. And I'm like, really? And so he said, yeah. He said, well, remember I asked you once after I got the listing if I could use a press release to promote a property for sale. And I said, yeah, absolutely. So we did it. The buyer came from the press release we used to promote the property. So buyer and seller, no cold calls, no mailing, just content online, focus on a specific market. That is the world that we are living in, whether you like it or not. This is where we're at. And I will tell you that, the best thing that anybody can do is, apply the old school fundamentals and with, the modern, media strategies.
Absolutely.
Because that is where it's at. And it's going to happen more and more. I saw a really, really interesting, I guess was a podcast that Ryan Serhant was on. And he was talking about how he put together a deal for $50 million. And the seller this is a story that he told. The seller went online into like chat or whatever and said, okay, I got a deal on my property. It's at 50 million. Is this the right price? And ChatGPT said, no, actually you're selling it way too cheap. You should be selling it. I don't know what the number was. Let's say 57 million. And the buyer did the same thing and said, am I paying the right price or paying too much? And ChatGPT said, no, you're overpaying. You got to know how to use this tool because this tool will tell you what you want to hear.
You're absolutely right. Absolutely. Couldn't agree more. Bilal M is saying, great for the smart brokers. Also global deal flow execution on specialization private deals. 100% Bilal. Ed has actually worked with brokers in Africa. Ed, you want to talk about that? I mean, this is global. This is a global strategy.
Yeah, we did a strategy for a guy. He's in Nairobi, and he's got 5 properties for sale. They're all like development sites, and so we did a press release campaign for each one of the. We've done four of the 5 properties so far, and they're all ranking really well, and it's off to a great start. I mean, he's got tremendous visibility.
Yeah, incredible.
But, again, the other thing I want to say is that, just because you create content doesn't mean it's going to rank. I mean, this goes back to Google. And I don't know if I finished my thought before, but when Google was created, they were looking for, they designed an algorithm that would measure, the content based on what somebody is searching. Like how, why does something rank number 1 or 2 or 3 or 10 or whatever? Let's say every single one of those, from 1 to 10 has equally excellent content. And let's say it checks all the Google boxes for, Google search. Why would one rank number 1 and one rank number 10? Well, it has to do with who is linking over to you. How many links are linking over to your page? How many sites are linking to you? Or what is the quality of the links that are linking over to you? So whoever has the more and quality links linking over to you is who Google is going to trust at the top. Now, that's a very important thing that's how these algorithms work. That's how it works offline too. Because if you've got the info that resonates with an owner of a property or a tenant or whatever, they're going to trust you. But when you have the credibility of somebody else, like for example, if, let's say Logan, like if Bob Knakal says, hey, you are the best, real estate broker in Kansas City, and I say the same thing. Somebody calls me and says, who do you recommend in Kansas City? Well, I say Logan. Bob says Logan. Bob has a lot more credibility than I am. I'm saying the exact same thing, but I don't have the credibility that Bob is. I didn't sell 2,300 buildings for $25 billion. But Bob did.
Yeah.
And that's how it works. So Bob carries a lot more weight. So when if somebody gets a recommendation, let's say they were to reach out to Bob and say, hey, who do you recommend? and they mention your name, you're that kind of credibility is going to that's going to get you the business. But
100%.
that's how it works. On the online and offline work together the same way. It's not the technology. I never grew. I was a broker. I don't know technology. I learned how to do things. I'm self-taught, but it's not fancy tech. It's old school applied online.
Well, here's proof stacking in action right here. Right. We've got a screenshot up here of top Kansas City commercial real estate broker. And you and I put out a press release on, frankly, how we're utilizing press releases so we did a press release on press releases, right?
Yes.
And look at the results here. I mean, Ed, this is pretty incredible, right? I mean, this is,
what it did was just this particular angle. This particular angle is put you on the board as a top broker in the market. And what will happen, see, this is what you're looking at here is you're looking at the results from the Google AI overview. And what's going to happen here is when the AI, so this is trusted content. Claude is going to crawl this content. So is ChatGPT and Perplexity and Gemini. They're going to crawl this content. So if Google AI is featuring you as a top broker along with these other top firms, they're going to pull that content as well. So what we're doing is we're creating a ripple effect, right? So we're using the media. This is wild how this works. And it's a wonderful way. This is like the proof stacking gig. It's like, it goes back to, the Massey Knakal days. It's like we had no credibility as a brand. Nobody knew us. We had no credibility. What we did was we went out and said, hey, look at this, check this out. Like we put together this report. We know your market where your building is better than anybody on the planet. That was our advantage. That's how we got business, and today you can use screenshots like this to just show somebody, hey, here's a little bit about me. Hey,
absolutely. Yeah. 100%. Well, we've talked a little bit about like press releases and why they still matter. I think the biggest component that I'm figuring this out of is you have to stay active with these press releases on a regular basis because, there's media always coming out, and the way that people are finding, vendors and people to work with is they're going to do a Google chat. They're going to do a chat or a Claude chat. And the top of mind content that goes to from these trusted sources is what they're pulling their answers from. And that's really important to think about. No longer is it just the regular search engine optimization, right? Of all that's still important for sure. But, if you're asking chat and you were talking about with Lev and Alpha Realty, like which broker should I go to? Actually, neither. You should be interviewing Alpha for the real estate deal here for the listing. That's really, really powerful. And that's something that you have to keep front and center. So these press releases matter because of that. I also have found it to be very beneficial when you can say to an owner, well, what's different about your company? Well, we actually don't just put your property on Crexy or CoStar. We put your property in the news, right? We put your property in the news. So for example, if you're a leasing broker and you've got an awesome space, you think every single owner, user, or business that's looking for space is out there searching all the different listing sites? No, they're not. They're going to search space available in New York City or space available in Martin City or Kansas City. And based off the press releases and the trusted resources it finds, that's what's going to populate, which is now going to have eyeballs on your leads. That's very powerful in my experience and in my opinion of why to do these press releases. So I wanted to just share that component as well, because we're using these in a lot of different angles, I think.
Yeah. Well, there's a little bit more to it than that too. I don't want to geek out on some of the, the content, but one of the things that is sort of interesting too is there's a guy named Dr. David Hawkins, and he created this thing called the map of consciousness. It goes from like a 0 all the way up to 1,000. right? And each different level is like it's got a different calibration. You know, some down in the lower tiers, it's like fear and anger and apathy and things, and even pride, right? And then when you break through the pride section, you know, you get into, you know, more positive affirmations. And that when you create content that is, you know, reaches, that calibrates higher on this map of consciousness, it it resonates with the search engines, and it also resonates with the consumers because it's so positive. It matches the, you know, the level of consciousness of the consumer. And that's a really, really, I mean, it's a little geeky to get into it, and there's a lot to know about that. But, you know, one of the things that, you know, working with you is that, you know, you're a very, very positive, you have a lot of these higher level attributes. Not everybody does. So
Sure.
somebody that calibrates at a lower level, we can do the exact same content for them, and they're not going to get the results. You know, so you want, you know, and there is another part to this, right? So when we create content, we're you know, we're trying to achieve these higher levels. We want, it's not the distribution platforms, it's the, you know, it's the level of it's the quality of the content that we're creating. And we try and get away from self-interest. We do not want to sell. We do not want to create content that is salesy, because as soon as we do that, it breaks down, it notches down the trust factor. What we want to do is we want to create content that is for the consumer. It's not about us.
Absolutely. Yeah. And here's how to do that. Here's some ideas on how to dominate your market today. You got to become known for something, whether that be
Yep.
a property type, a submarket, a deal structure. Own it, right? Be the name that people say first. You got to publish those insights regularly, on a regular basis. Be publishing insights. I mean, there's probably four or five different mediums that we're using on a regular basis to publish those insights, all over LinkedIn. Obviously, LinkedIn posts, but newsletters, and this show here is another way we bring insights. Our own newsletter through Constant Contact. You know, these reports that we're putting together, are putting them back up on our website. I mean, the press releases that we're doing, there's 4 or 5 different ways to publish the insights on a regular basis. So that's number 2. You know, and then obviously using every single deal that you have listed or have completed as proof. You know, Ed, one thing we really haven't talked about is we spent a lot of time talking about the press release strategy, but you know, we haven't spent a ton of time on how to actually use case studies as
Yeah.
a way to stack that proof, right? And I mean, case studies are one of the most important things to our business. So let's spend a little bit of time talking
Yeah.
about the case studies.
Yeah. Well, you know, this goes back to, you know, my first article in the New York Times. I unknowingly created a template.
Yeah.
And if you look at the way that we create success stories, is we're not saying, you know, you know, that we solved a problem, because now you're getting into your own self-interest. It's like, oh, look at me. Here's somebody that had a problem and I solved the problem. Look at how great I am. That's self-interest. That takes it down a notch. And the search engines don't reward that. What they do reward is a very, very simple structure that took me years to figure out, a lot of trial and error. But the way it works is you need a compelling headline, a headline that tells a story that somebody will understand what that success story is about without reading the story. You go look at BKREA, go look at any of their success stories on bkrea.com, and you can look through the whole page of, you know, all the success stories, and every single headline is going to tell you what that article is about without reading it. You know, like, look at this one, right? Large scale Brooklyn development site, you know, in Clinton Hill for 17 million. You know, looking at the headline, what this is about. You look at the pic. Okay, he's got a great picture. You know what this is about. The consumer is going to scroll down, right? And you can see what we're also doing is we're creating links. It's very important to include links, because these algorithms are going to follow the links and they're going to learn more. You get down here, bullet points. People scan, they don't read. sales price per square foot. You go down a little further. Here we got the description. How big is it? Where is it? What's the address? How many stories? How big's the lot size? You go down a little bit further. We're getting into geographic information. We're telling, and what this does is it's telling a story about the location, the property. We put in a Google map, like with the Google Maps, we try and scale them out a little bit so that you can get a perspective when the consumer glances on it. If the map is too close, you don't get a perspective. When you move it out the right distance, you can see, okay, now I see where it is. Just by a quick glance, you can see it's near Bed-Stuy, it's near downtown Brooklyn, it's near Carroll Gardens, not that far from downtown New York. You scroll down a little bit further. Yeah, there you go. You scroll down here, frequently asked questions. Well, Claude, ChatGPT, Gemini, they're all answer engines. So we want to use questions that relate to this particular topic as a signal to these algorithms. So very, very simple to do, but this is the structure. So if you look at every single one of these success stories that we've done for Bob, everyone follows the exact same structure. This is the structure. This is the way it works. I mean, we've tested, all we do is crank out content, and because what are we doing? We're using the internet, but I'm like a broker. I'm trying to sell. I'm trying to help people get business. And so we test every single angle to see what gets the performance. And this is, if you look at, you look at the Google AI mode, or you go look at Perplexity and look and see how they deliver content, we're mirroring the way that they create content. So we're giving it, we're feeding it on a silver platter. And this is what, everybody needs to do is feed it on a silver platter. The other thing you can do with this, with strategies like this, is you can turn, and this is we used to have to write this. We'd have to type our fingers, right? We'd have to type and write content word by word by word. Today we have this amazing AI, but you need to use it right. We can take every single one of these success stories and we can turn it into a LinkedIn post. We can turn it into an Instagram post. We can turn it into videos. And let me show one other thing. I just got to grab my phone for 1 second.
Yeah.
The other thing you can do here with your phone, which is really, really amazing. So nobody has an excuse to create amazing content today. And I actually started to do this with, we're doing some work with a woman named Tanya Reagan down in Dallas. And what we're doing is we're helping her build her online reputation down in the Dallas market, right? And so what I did was I would get on a Zoom call with her, and I would open up my phone, and I would go right to the, the recording feature right here. And you can see it like right here on my phone, right here. It's like this little, every iPhone has this feature. And what you can do is, what I started to do is I would record her. I'd say, tell me about this property.
Absolutely. Yeah.
One of the properties that she got involved in early on, like over 20 years ago, was the farmer's market in downtown Dallas, which was, pretty rundown area. It was a farmer's market. A lot of out of town farmers would bring their fruit and vegetables in, a lot of industrial buildings. It was, it was sort of a seedy area. And she bought a property there for like $1. And I said, tell me the story about the farmer's market. Like, why did you buy that property? What got you in? Tell me the story of what happened. And so I just clicked the record button, and I just put the phone down in front of my, my PC, and I let her tell the story about, what the whole story about the farmer's market. Well, what I did was at the end of the call, 20 minutes, click copy transcript. I email the transcript over to my desktop, and it comes over in my email in one big run-on sentence. I took that content, I popped it into ChatGPT, and I said, convert this into bullet points with bold words to lead each bullet. And then I took the content from ChatGPT and I put it in a Claude, because I like the way that ChatGPT creates the bullet points better than Claude does. But I sort of like lately, I've been using Claude a lot. I like the way that they create the content. So I took the bullet points and I had isolated everything now. And I took the bullet points, put it over to Claude, and I said, based on this title, this is what I want in this article. And I got this amazing article in her voice. And one of the things you can do is you can do that to sell property, because rather than just creating a typical setup sheet with, block and lot and address and price, which is every broker in the world does the same thing. This is a way with a strategy like this where you can tell the real story in your voice about a property, and you can use that to send to all your prospects. Send it over to your owner and say, hey, look at what we did and how we're creating content to promote your property. You can send that out in an email. You can put it on your website. Now, instead of forcing the buyer to figure it out on their own, you're telling a story about that property. It's a killer way to sell. I mean, what we're doing, talking about is sales. I mean, this is all sales. This is all, how do we communicate? How do we do more of this and utilize these assets, all these tools to create more content that does the selling for us, so we don't have to push that darn rock up the hill every single time. Let's use some proof stacking here, right? Let's use some leverage. Proof stacking is a lot of different levers. That's what it's a business model, but within it, there's lots of little levers that you learn to use to move things along so you can get more business with less resistance. I mean, that's really, at the end of the day, really what we're talking about is we're like, how do we get more deals? How do we do more business with less resistance, less people doubting us? And so that, this is important, because it's not just getting you need the lead, you need to get the business, you need to close the business. But when the deal is done, it doesn't end there, because now that client that you just sold that property for, they become a referral source. Or if they own multiple properties, you're going to do more business with them. They may have partners. So this whole process it starts in the very, very beginning, and it goes all the way through the life of what you're doing. And it gets into all, networking, and it just becomes an ongoing machine that we're building. I wish I had this back when I was starting to explain, like, here's how it works. Here's how relationships compound. You think, a lot of times is, you're in the business and you're trying to, you're struggling to get some deals, and you just think it's not going to work, and maybe there's a better way. But the reality is that, we're just trying to use this to develop relationships with people, so that we can, and what happens is those relationships, they compound over time. And so more deals come, bigger deals come. So it's all pretty cool, but it's, at the end of the day, it's really based on that simple process of focus, whether it's a product type or it's a geography, going deep rather than wide.
Absolutely. Well, I appreciate you walking us through that, Ed. I'm going to get to our quick takes section of our show. So I know you're a voracious reader. It comes through with everything I have read about proof stacking. I love the references to all of the books in there, but do you have a favorite book that you like to reference on anything, or what's the most gifted book that you've sent out to people?
I got to tell you, this book right here by Steve Pressfield, and it's nobody wants to read your shit.
Yeah.
And this is an awesome book. It's a very easy read. Every page is a chapter. It's short, but the point is, would you read what you just wrote? And he gets into storytelling, which is, there's a section on storytelling in here, and he uses the Rocky story, and he tells the story about how to the structure, and he talks about how, whether you're selling real estate or you're selling movie scripts or whatever it is, it's always based on the same structure. You've got Act 1, Act 2, Act 3. You have you have a theme, you have a concept, you have an insightful moment, and you have a climax. and you have a hero, and you have a villain. Those are the components of a story. And that's what I've tried to implement in this whole program. And because we want to make this content as memorable, we want to tell what we're doing is without being storytellers, we become natural storytellers just by understanding these concepts. And this book really gets into it, and he tells the story about, how Apollo Creed pulled Rocky's name out of a hat, basically. And then it tells them, the act 2 was when Rocky, walks up the stairs after a big, training, and he lies down next to Adrian in the bed and says, I can't win. I can't beat Apollo. And she says, well, what are you going to do? And he says, well, if I could still, nobody's ever gone 15 rounds with the champ. If I can still be standing, after 15 rounds, I can prove to the guys in the neighborhood that I'm not the bum they thought I was. Well, that's a very interesting line there. That's like the insightful moment in the climax built in. And the rest, we know what's going to happen is the rest of the movie is about this big buildup to the big brawl at the end. And that's, the big fight at the end. And the rest of the act 3 leads right up to that thing. That's how everything, we try and structure all our content in that way. And that's something that I learned. I did not know this, but it really helped me. And, but I think, this is a great book. There's, there's a couple of really great little things to learn in that book. I was trying to figure out, like, I had this model. I'd studied Eugene Schwartz, who wrote Breakthrough Advertising, one of the greatest marketing books ever written. I went through that book at such a deep level, and I thought, okay, this is it. I'm going to figure out the formula. I'm going to be able to explain to people how this works. But I couldn't. It was this book that enabled me to understand how to take that concept and communicate it to people. And so I think that Steve Pressfield book, you can see I've got all my little Post-it tabs.
Yeah, absolutely.
I've broken this thing down, and what you're hearing today is a lot of Pressfield.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So that's helped me a lot.
Absolutely. Appreciate you sharing that book. I'll definitely check it out. Well, with you being kind of on the cutting edge here of all this marketing, what do you think is next in commercial real estate marketing? I mean, like, what do you see the future being of commercial real estate marketing? Is it what we've been talking about today?
I think this is it.
Yeah.
I mean, it's old school. I mean, it's the same thing that we've been doing for years. We're just using it, online.
Absolutely.
And that's your unique edge, especially as a boutique shop. I mean, I think the future is, the story. You're going to hear more and more stories, like the Lev Mavashev story, where somebody goes online and they do a search online, and they make their decisions based on what they're finding online. And so that is definitely happening, whether you like it or not.
Yep.
That is happening. And you need to, we all need to try and build our personal brands as best as we can, because people are going to check you out online. And I've done this strategy. I worked with a guy who's a real estate guy who's worth a couple $2 billion, self-made guy, owns a lot of property, and he was getting hammered with this negative content that was showing up under his name. I mean, there was a lawsuit by 2 residential tenants that was showing up under his name, that was bringing him down. And like, he owns 15 million square feet of space, and he's got 2 little residential tenants.
Yeah.
that are a thorn in his side. Well, what do you do? How do you get that out of the way? Well, you've got to start building your personal brand. And what we did was we used, these strategies that we're talking about here today to build his personal brand. Well, how valuable is that, right? You're a developer. You've got private partners that are checking you out. You got bankers, you've got, brokers bringing you deals, all kinds of people that are influenced by you.
Absolutely.
So you want the better. I mean, this is the world it's like a whole new language in a way. And the thing I want to mention too is that, I got involved in the SEO space by chance. Over 20 years ago. It was a property that I bought. I did a rehab on it, converted it to condos, and I built a website. got it ranked on the search engines. Search engine was Google at the time. This was pre-social media. And I sold out all the units. And that's how I got things going. And, that really hasn't changed since that strategy hasn't changed. But I think that, I think it's more answer optimization. I think this is how people are using, they're going on, everybody's going online and they're doing these searches. People are using ChatGPT and Claude and all these. I think that's where we're going to see. I think it's going to be more so. And I just think that, listen, there's always going to be real business. There are going to be people. I was at the Knakal event last night. I mean, there are people out there that are just like hustling like crazy. Some people are doing an amazing amount of business. They're not doing strategies like this.
Yeah, absolutely.
But they can get more business if they do this,
Definitely. Well, if you guys want to learn more about what Ed's got going on, you can check out his book, Proof Stacking. You can go over to CREpressreleases.com. I've got it up on the screen here. He's proofs in the pudding. You can find him all over the place on social media, on the internet. So please do go check out Ed. Ed, thanks you for sharing. So
let me before we wrap up. You mentioned in the beginning that you were going to talk just a little bit about some of the, how it's working for you.
Yeah. Well, I kind of peppered those stories in, I think, with that one slide showing up on the search engine or the AEO. I think that's important for us as well. But we've got a lot of what I'll call, because of the press releases that we've been doing, we've been getting a lot of inbound leads for even more news stories. So other news outlets have been reaching out to me for quotes and for, other, opportunities to be interviewed. I just got an email I just saw from Biz Now. They want me to be on a panel in August in their events here. So, I mean, that component is working extremely well. But I would also say that, the other piece is, when we go and are working with an owner and they ask us about our strategy, what makes us different, it's absolutely, we've created our own presentation materials based off our results working with you. And we print those out and we leave them with the ownership group. And it really does differentiate us from most other brokerages because nobody else really has a press release strategy paired with a podcast strategy and a digital marketing media strategy. And that's been able to elevate us from, small boutique shop with 10 people to, hey, these folks can get more visibility likely than the other brokers. And they have a process to do that. So it shows up in our value equation almost on every component. And, that's how we're using it. And that's how we're going to continue to use it. And, I think that what I'm learning with the press releases is, you have to continue to be active with them because, those models are always searching different and most relevant content. So finding new ways to market and different components that we want to put out there in the marketplace. So it's been working great for us.
Yeah. Awesome. Great to hear. Great to hear. Yeah.
You guys, check out Ed over at CREpressreleases.com. And if you are interested in talking with Midwest commercial real estate advisors about buying, selling, or leasing commercial real estate in Missouri or Kansas, head over to our website, www.mwcreadvisors.com. You can go check out our client success stories that Ed has helped us with. They're all over the website. And please do reach out to us for any commercial real estate needs that you have here in Kansas or Missouri. Ed, it's been a pleasure. Thank you for being here. And thank you for all the listeners. We had a lot of listeners in. Thank you for the questions. Appreciate everybody's engagement today as well. We'll see you next time.
Thanks, Logan. Great. Appreciate you having me.